she's going to tell the story about that. Please welcome my friend Christy Emmons-Jones, daughter of Dixie Locke. Thank you for waiting on us back there. We went a little long with Hound Dog, but the censors were gonna cut us. You know, we're gonna just be shot from the waist up now. So your mom. Well, first of all, tell everyone that, because we have new fans. Tell everyone your mom, because your mom knew Elvis before all this big rigmarole started.
Yeah, so in the Elvis world, Mom is known as Elvis's first girlfriend. Dixie Locke is her name, and they met. My mom had just turned 16 years old. A lot of people seem to assume that they met at high school, but that's not the case. My mom had just turned 16. Elvis was already out of high school. He was 19 years old, and they met at church. So, as most of you probably know, Elvis's first love of music was gospel music, and specifically gospel quartet music. So my mother's church was First Assembly of God in Memphis, and a famous quartet called the Blackwood Brothers were headquartered there at the church. So they came to hear, Elvis brought his parents to come and hear the gospel quartet, and that's where he and my mom met.
And love at first sight, at least on his part, it seemed.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite pictures of Mom and Elvis. For all the ladies in the audience, if you can just look at her face, to me, you can just envision how she is feeling. Just that tickled, giddy, young love. There's just such a tenderness in that photo. Even though we can't see his beautiful face in that photo, I love Mom's expression there.
And as a kid growing up with Dixie being your mom, when did you understand because you grew up in Memphis, so when did you understand who your mom was in Elvis' story? Because obviously you were aware of Elvis growing up.
I get asked about that a lot. And so, I will tell y'all, growing up, first of all, my parents will have been married 63 years this November. Thank you. Mom will turn 85 the end of this month. My dad just turned 86. My father was a firefighter for the city of Memphis for over 25 years. So my dad was my hero, and I loved seeing him go to work in his uniform. We were a very close-knit family. So I tell people it wasn't like we often sat around the kitchen table talking about my mom dating Elvis, even though it was a known fact. My curiosity really peaked when I was fortunate enough to be one of the first tour guides hired here at Graceland when they opened the doors in 1982. Thank you.
If you were on those first tours in '82, go back and look at your photos. You may have had her as your tour guide.
And that in and of itself was a very interesting story, but it was during that time when I was learning my scripts. For those of you that may have come to Graceland for tours in those early days, you had a live guide. You didn't walk through the home with a headset. So we had to learn these scripts. We had to learn all about Elvis's life, his accomplishments, and that, Tom, was the aha moment for me. Because that's when I realized the magnitude of the man, Elvis Presley, and what could it have been like to have been my mom.
Yeah. What was your mom's family's reaction to meeting Elvis, who at that era in the 50s, that time in the 50s, didn't look like the other boys in high school?
Not at all. And so when Elvis came to my grandparents' house for the first time to pick up my mom, after he came in, and I will say this, y'all, Mother and my entire family always spoke about how gentlemanly he was, how respectful and mannerly he was. But you're right, he did look very different from the other teenage boys. And so after he came in and my grandparents got to meet him, my grandmother said to my mother, she said, you know, I don't think y'all need to go out tonight. Why don't you just stay here at the house and play games? And you know what? My mom and Elvis seem to have been just completely fine with that. My mom had 3 sisters. And so they all sat around the coffee table in the living room floor and played card games and board games that night. But I will tell you that by the end of that, Mother said the whole family was just as in love with him as she was.
And your family got to be friends with Vernon and Gladys as well. And we don't hear a lot about Gladys in the story. You know, Vernon was there throughout the career, but we don't hear a lot. But the moms kind of really bonded.
They did. The Presleys and the Locks became very, very close as families. I know all of you know about Elvis's brother, being stillborn. My grandmother also lost a child at birth. And so this became a very unique bond between Gladys Presley and my grandmother, Lillian Locke. So that was one thing that those ladies could share their loss, their grief. They could understand what each other had gone through. So that gave them a really close bond. Gladys and my mother had a very close relationship, almost like that of a mother and daughter. A lot of you will know and recognize the prom picture when Elvis took my mother to her junior prom. She was 17 and he was 20 at that point. And then we do have a slide of that. There is their prom picture. What a lot of people may not know is that Gladys actually took my mother shopping and purchased that prom dress.
Wow.
Because Elvis is already, so Dixie's there in 54 with Elvis when
Yes.
he has that rehearsal with Bill and Scotty. She's there throughout that month of July of 54 when it ends up by July 5th he records That's All Right. July 30th-ish, he's at the Overton Park Shell in his first show, and your mom is seeing this is about to change.
Yes. Mother said that she and Gladys were sort of over on the sides of the stage, like maybe the area where I came out here. So Gladys and my mother were watching from the sides at that Overton Park Shell concert. And Mother said when all of the ladies started screaming that she and Gladys got so tickled over that because they were as surprised at the reaction as I think Elvis was. So they were very, very close. And also, when Elvis started doing out-of-town gigs, Mother was still a teenager, keep that in mind, so she was not old enough to go into nightclubs where he may have been performing, and she said even if she were old enough, my grandparents wouldn't have allowed her to anyway. So when Elvis would travel to some of these engagements, my mom would go and spend the night with Gladys and Vernon. And then when Elvis would come in the wee hours of the morning, my mom and Gladys would get up and fix breakfast. And then they would all sit down and have breakfast together. And sometimes Elvis was just there for a few hours before leaving again.
Back out.
Yes.
And what I love about this story of reading your book, this is her prom. Elvis is already on the road.
Yes.
But he comes back to be at her prom.
That's right. And Mother said when she and Elvis first started dating, a lot of people looked at Elvis as an outsider, so to speak. Again, because he looked different, he dressed different, he acted differently. But fast forward to when this prom rolled around, and now Elvis is becoming the Elvis Presley. Mother said when they got to the prom, everybody wanted them to sit at their table. Everybody wanted to get their picture made. And so she said it was really fun and exciting because she was really watching all of this evolve and watching him become so wildly successful and recognized.
And your book, and I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to tell it in a way that teases it enough that we want to get the book, because the way you write about it in the book and your mom talks about it is such a sweet story. Your mom realized what was going on with Elvis, and she's going to be outside afterwards, after this, with her mom's book that they worked on together, telling this story. But just a tease of what it was. We saw a little bit of it in the movie. Your mom's part in the movie was much bigger, and maybe one day when there's a longer edition, that part of Dixie expands a little bit. But just a little tease about what your mom saw happening with this guy who came off tour to come back to prom with her.
So keep in mind that the Presleys and the Lockes were both very, very poor families and very simple families. Both Elvis and my mother had a very strong foundation in their faith. That was very important in something that they shared together. Their love of gospel music was very important. It is so interesting to me when I look back now and think about the clarity that my mother had as a teenager when she started seeing Elvis spinning very quickly into stardom, going to Hollywood, doing movies, making more and more appearances, becoming the icon that we all know he did. My mother's fortitude and clarity allowed her to say, that's your life, that's your dream, that's your gift, and that's where the world is requiring you to go. At the same time, she also had the clarity to know that that wasn't her dream. And she wanted that simple life. She wanted the husband that went to work at 8 and came home at 5 and went to church on Sundays and was there to raise a family. And she got that. The reality is that both of them, that love never died. For any of us that can think back to our first love, regardless of where life takes you, there's always that special place about the first person and those tender memories. So that to me is what the book conveys.
Yeah, and there's love letters, and your mom, Elvis's love letters, that you just see these two teenagers that are so in love with each other and not knowing what the future holds.
Yeah, and that was a really special story too, Tom, because just a few years ago, some of the staff at Graceland were going through some of the archives, and inside a handbag that belonged to Gladys was a wallet that belonged to Elvis, and inside the wallet were my mother's love letters. And these were written when my mom was sitting in Southside High School here in Memphis as a young girl, and you can just envision what she's thinking, because it's like, hey, handsome, I'm supposed to be doing my homework, but I can't think of anything but you. And it's so endearing to think that all of those years later that those love letters were still around.
And I also think it's amazing that your mom took as long as she did. She didn't do this without prompting.
Not without prompting. And Mom had been asked for years, why haven't you written your book? My mom has always been very sacred, for lack of a better word, about her memories of Elvis. She was very protective. She did not want any of them to be misconstrued. And I think that when I approached her about doing the book with her, she had the confidence of knowing that it would strictly be her story. If any of you have the book, and I hope that you do, you'll notice that at the beginning of each chapter, there's a Bible scripture. There was a song that was referenced. These were very intentional pieces pieces of the book because those are things that are very important to Mom. And I think that she had worried that if she had given up that control to let someone else tell her story, that it might not be exactly that. But now we're in a society where you can self-publish, so you can retain that control. The story is only and exactly what you want it to be. And so that is when the opportunity for me to collaborate with Mom and preserve these memories in writing came to fruition.
How did you do it? Did she write, or did you talk to her and get the stories?
So over the years, my mother has spoken briefly at events such as this, and so she had some notes, very vague notes that she had written down on little flashcards or things like that. I knew the basic story, but my sister, who is here with me today, she and I will tell y'all, this was a COVID blessing, because in March of 2020, when everyone's world shut down, it gave my mom and my sister and I an extended period of time together. And we had slumber parties. We would find bed and breakfast places that would allow us to come and stay there because, all the hotels were closed. But we would find a remote bed and breakfast where we could get away from the distractions. Nothing against my husband, who is here, but you have to get where you can focus, where there's no pets, no distractions, no family members. And Mother and Nikki and I would sit for hours, and we would ask her questions, and we would either record it, type it, write it. And there were so many times Mom would say, "Are you not through with that book yet?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, we have many more questions to ask," because we really wanted to have the reader experience exactly what she was feeling and exactly what was going on in her life as a young teenager who happened to be dating Elvis.
She was on that part of the roller coaster going up before
Yes.
all that happened.
Absolutely.
And if you wonder, and this is my favorite story about your mom's relationship with the Presley family, as close as your mom was with Gladys and Elvis's dad, I was getting ready to interview her mom for the very first time, and one of my questions was, what's your relationship, and I didn't really know how to word it, what's your relationship with Priscilla? Because I didn't know. I didn't have to ask that question because when I introduced Dixie, Priscilla came walking out with her and sat down with her and said, "I just want to be here with my friend." Your mom and Priscilla are like, they're lifelong friends.
They are very close friends. It is a very unexpected friendship, but a very sincere friendship. I was very blessed to be present when my mother and Priscilla met. It was at the 25th anniversary concert in 2002, which at that time would have been down at the Pyramid, if any of you know Memphis history. And so Jack Soden came and got my mother, and he's like, "Come with me. I've been wanting to make this introduction for a number of years."
Wow.
So he takes my mother by the hand, and we're backstage. This was after the concert, so we're in the green room. He grabs my mom by the hand and starts walking with her, and she grabs my hand and is like, "Come with me." And of course I did. So Jack walks up to Priscilla and says, "Priscilla, I have waited so long. I wanted to introduce you to," and that was as far as he got. And Priscilla embraced my mother in such a loving, endearing way. It was very special to witness. And I watched as these two young women, in my opinion, started to share stories. And one of the first things Priscilla said to my mother is, "I can't wait to talk to you more because I want to tell you all the things that Elvis shared with me about you." And I thought that was remarkable. So the two of them did forge a very special friendship. To this day, they call each other their sisters. We've been at family gatherings on holidays, and my mother's cell phone will ring, and I can hear Priscilla coming through my mom's phone. Hey, sister! And they're really, really close. And it is an unexpected friendship, but one that's very true. And just another amazing example of how Elvis brings people together.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story, and what makes it even more special is it's you and your mom, his family, putting this together without any outside interference, worried about telling tales and your mom wanted to be sure to tell the truth and to tell that very wonderful story. Thank you for being here. If you'd like to get a copy of that, she's going to be right outside. Give her a chance to get out there. She's got to run around that way. But it's a beautiful book, and you can read the love letters, and she'll sign it for you. And her mom, we tell your mom we love her very much.
I will, and she sends her love to all of you as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me.
And I know I saw you back watching previously, hopefully with Angie and with Robert Dye and with John and with Christy. Hopefully everybody found out something they might not have known before, because that's what we do at Elvis 101. We've now graduated. We'll have second semester at birthday. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you at the 68 tonight. B&G's got a show right here this afternoon. Come see that with Pat Dunn and Ben Thompson. And I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock across the street at Conversations. Wish me